You're watching Bread and Roses, a weekly political social magazine that's broadcast in English and Persian by New Channel TV. Hello everyone, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fariborz Pooya. In this week's program, we interview Goran Adamson on academic freedom.
We'll also be talking about the heinous terrorist attacks in several cities across the world, a UK government inquiry into Sharia courts, a protest in defense of fast-defiers, an insane fatwa saying suffocate the lot, those who defy fasting rules and the hijab. And in our slice of life, we're going to remember a wonderful, brave woman's fight against compulsory veiling. Stay with us. In the 2 weeks that have passed since we last broadcast our program, there have been several heinous terrorist attacks in several cities across the globe. We know in Turkey, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Orlando, Florida, in the US. I mean, again, you know, terrorism is the mask taken off of the Islamist movement, isn't it?
And one of the things that you notice, irrespective of which country, there is one there is one thread between all of those, is that the human beings has no value for the terrorist sort of movement, and the Islamists are leading terrorist organization and pushing this through as a means of taking power internationally everywhere. And anybody who denies this actually putting his head in the sand.
Yeah, and the reality is that it has no mercy. It has no mercy, no matter who you are, what you're doing. You know, there's no politics behind this. It's just sheer brutality. There's a fantastic report, though I don't know if you've heard, just recently, where someone saw in southern Turkey a suicide bomber coming into their mosque, and he started shouting that he's going to explode himself, and they tackled him, beat the crap out of him. I would have paid good money to have been there, and he was arrested. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean that's good news in a way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is that's what makes compromising with these guys a despicable act. I think trying to sort of, trying to accommodate these people, try to have a policy of accommodating the Islamists.
It's a political movement. It needs to be
tackled politically.
Tackled, yeah. And of course, one of the projects of this movement, one aspect is terrorism, the other is, of course, Sharia law in countries where it's not possible to have the full spectrum of it with regards to criminal matters like amputations, stonings. There's an attack on women and in the family in particular. So we know that in Britain, Theresa May, the Home Secretary, soon to be Prime Minister, has issued an investigation into these courts. But hundreds of women's rights campaigners have complained about this inquiry, saying that it's not enough.
Absolutely. I think one of the key issues is that has been raised by those people who are opposing the way this inquiry has been launched and it's going to be conducted is a narrow remit of the inquiry, that limiting it to best practice and finding where there is bad practices and trying to weed out the bad practices. But actually the whole campaign for one law for all, it's always been demanding that women should have fundamental rights, and religious laws, and particular Islamic Sharia law, does not treat women and men equally, and discriminates against children.
Yeah, I mean, all religious courts are of that nature, including the Beth Din, for example, the Jewish courts. What we're saying is that investigate them fully, and don't just weed out bad and good practice when it comes to women's rights. Any sort of restrictions, religious restrictions, are bad, and if women are to have access to equality and justice, legal justice, it has to be separate and outside of the context of religion.
And I think my worry is that the inquiry has actually is flooding the whole thing with the religious understanding of Sharia codes,
definitely.
and people who've been appointed as advisors, they actually have fundamentalist view. And how could that be a fair inquiry?
Yeah, so it's a whitewash. We're calling for a fair inquiry, a judge-led inquiry. So it's something that we're seeing more and more coverage on this issue. Lots of wonderful women's rights campaigners and individuals have joined the campaign, and hopefully it's something that will have a real effect on the rights of women in this country, minority women in this country. As a final piece of news, we wanted to talk about the protest against forced fasting in many countries and the fact that people are persecuted for it. We had a wonderful protest in front of various embassies in Britain, in London, Iranian embassy, Bangladeshi, Saudi, Moroccan,
and
Pakistani. It was fantastic. And it was just in defense of people who are being persecuted for defying fasting rules.
Yes, I mean, while the Islamism, we try to celebrate Eid and Ramadan, the reality is that one of the 5 pillars of Islam is compulsory, and as far as the Islamists have power and they have the strength, they'll impose it on everybody. That's why it's important from now, the earliest stage, to raise the issue of the right of people to live as they want, and whether they want to fast or not is not an issue, is a personal issue, is not a public issue. And actually one of the issues that worries me is Mayor of London trying to sort of constantly promote Eid and fasting and Ramadan in public space. And we need to warn everybody against this public notion of religious ceremonies.
Recently, we interviewed Goran Adamson, and he's an academic who spoke to us about attempts at censorship at his university near Gothenburg in Sweden. Stay with us and listen to what he had to say. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I heard about a scandal that took place at your university recently. Can you tell us exactly what happened?
Well, I had a course, gave a course, and in the course I could choose various things, and I decided to give a lecture on John Stuart Mill and some key ideas in his teaching. And so I did. I talked about John Stuart Mill, and I, among other things, I said that while religions might not necessarily be true, they still give people a sense of belonging, a sense of community. And, well, a liberal society can't give you that, because a liberal society basically says, the world is open, pick and choose, do what you want. Unless you do something, your life might be pretty empty and so forth. And as I did this, when I gave this lecture, I thought it was a good lecture, just an overview. There was a Swedish Muslim convert, all dressed in black, with a white powdered face, sitting there in complete silence, looking at me. And then I thought, oh well, see how it goes. And 2 days later, I got a very long, winding, quite aggressive email from her, where there was a lot of, I would say, misunderstandings about science, misunderstandings about the university's role, and she accused me for not being neutral in my teaching, not giving a neutral lecture, whatever that is, And she said that she would put me under surveillance. Yeah. So I was a bit, how should I say? I was a bit troubled by this. And then she signed off this long, pretty unpleasant email with the words, "The student dressed in her pride." And then I wonder what's going to happen now. And then after a few days, I was called in by the head of department and some head secretary for consultations and discussions, they said. And I was wondering, what is this about? What's going to happen now? What is this? And what are the charges? And I said, what's going to happen? What might happen? And then they answered, and I remembered very clearly, they said, well, you might get either a reprimand or you might get a warning.
Why would you get a warning and reprimand? What had you done wrong?
Well, my problem, my sin, my mistake was probably that I had lectured on John Stuart Mill in front of a person with a strong religious belief. And that's also what I said during this, first of a row, there were many of these consultations and discussions where I felt I had these allegations, whirling around me, against me, and it was pretty unpleasant. So I actually said that my problem here, what I did, the reason why I can get a warning is because I have been lecturing on John Stuart Mill. And then there were one discussion after the other, and then a lawyer was called in, and there was a formal allegation, and they said we have to do this, because a student has complained, and the student said that she had been discriminated against, both as a Muslim and also as an individual. But clearly, I never mentioned Islam during my lecture. I talked about John Stuart Mill. My lecture was not about me and this convert. The lecture was about John Stuart Mill and freedom of speech.
Why do you think it's come to this, and what do you think about the reaction of the university, which should have really sided with you?
Well, I think it is appalling, I have to say that. It was a University West, which is a little college outside Gothenburg. And I was shaken because I thought, and I told them, you are supposed to defend the intellectual autonomy of the university in the West, and you don't do that. And I think this is a disgrace. I told them this. I have to be honest. I try to be an intellectual, and if you're an intellectual, you need to see things from various perspectives. And the only thing they did, they were bending backwards to appease this student, and I think it sends completely the wrong signals. And this investigation lasted for about 8 months, and I sent hundreds of emails in all kinds of directions, and on and off I realized that I'm doing this, I'm playing this game, and the allegations against me are still around, and the allegations is nothing but lecturing on a classic, one of the founding fathers of a modern society. And if you can't, I need to say this also, with some emphasis, if you can't lecture on John Stuart Mill, who is, I would say, a middle-of-the-road liberal, who, was defending the rights of women, defending a modern society, if you can't lecture on him, I don't know if you can lecture on anybody. You surely can't lecture on Nietzsche or Marx or anybody else, So this was a little bit of a rude awakening, and I know these things are going on. I'm not the only case, and we are being pressurized to. Eventually the case was dropped. The charges against me were dropped, and then when they told me that, I asked them, so. Have you now talked? Did you have a discussion? A kind discussion with this Muslim convert? Did you actually tell her that maybe you shouldn't do this because this is a university? No, we haven't done anything like that. So it's I feel like I'm just waiting for the next wave, and I know this is going on at other universities also.
What sort of support can people give you and people like you?
Sorry, can you say?
What sort of support can people give you and those like you?
Well, it's pretty evident. I think they shouldn't support me. I don't need support. They should support principles of a university. Because the university, and this is very important, the university as an institution came about in response to a lot of religious oppression, a few hundred years back. So the religion was a modern institution where you should be allowed to talk about anything. Yeah? And now, if you're a pessimist, you could say that the whole thing, we are rolling back the whole thing again. We are turning 180 degrees, and then we are marching back into, I don't know where. But it's this is very frightening, and I think this is a huge thing. And I think one of the problems here is a kind of multicultural, approach to education, where people are supposed to, where there is no solidarity, where there are no common values about, okay, what kind of society is this? You know, if we can't share certain values, if we escape into our various ethnic enclaves, then that is, and I guess it will be, the end of a modern society. You know, in terms of solidarity and in terms of cohesion and trust and so forth. So this doesn't look good. You know, does not look good. No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed the interview with Goran Adamson. I mean, it's pretty outrageous when you think about it. He's taught John Stuart Mill, he's hadn't even mentioned Islam, and it's just this offense industry gone into overdrive. And more absurd than the Muslim convert complaining about it is the university taking it seriously. I mean, it's, you know,
it's amazing. I think
it's amazing.
The irony is about the lectures on John Stuart Mill and freedom of expression, because he's one of the proponents of the freedom of expression and women's rights, and that's something every student needs to study and debate and challenge that. I mean, that's what people used to go to universities to run away from religion, to run away from the family, learn new things, exciting, and then
now they go for gender segregation.
It's just amazing. And I think the outrageous part of it is not just the Islamists and the religious trying to sort of suffocate freedom of expression and not to allow any criticism of their ideas and religion. But the other issue is the institutions who are actually succumbing to this pressure and acting outrageously. And I think university that Goran was at, and I think they behave outrageously, and they should be condemned.
No, definitely, and I think definitely we need to be supporting academics like Goran Adamson. I mean, it's just reminded me of what happened at Goldsmiths when students tried to interrupt from the Islamic Society, tried to interrupt my talk, and again, it just shows that it seems that they have no idea what a university is meant to be, but it seems the universities have also forgotten what they're meant to be.
Yeah.
They're so busy kowtowing to this nonsense.
And I think one issue that I remember, there were a couple of key areas that the Islamic regime in Iran undertook to defeat the Iranian Revolution and impose an Islamic fascist government in Iran. One was to attack women and women's rights. The other one was the closing down of universities, getting rid of all the academics and destroying academic freedom and freedom of expression. That was the second pillar of the Islamic regime. The third one was to arrest all the opponents, free thinkers, and massacre a whole generation of Iranians. Remember these three things. Freedom of expression is an important part of the struggle against Islamists.
The insane fatwa of this week is from Yusuf Tabatabai.
Remember him?
He is a cleric. He's the one who said the
leader
rivers run dry because of the veiling problem.
Yes.
Was that him?
It's him. He's the Friday prayer leader.
Friday prayer leader.
in Isfahan, who actually did say, you know, the main river in Isfahan, Zayan Darud, is dried up.
All the scientists, there's real reason behind it,
Yes.
So anyway, now he said that people who defy fasting rules, that's us.
And hijab.
People who defy hijab rules,
And that's
us. They are worse than the kafirs. They are
apostates, worse than the apostates.
No, they're corrupt. Munafiq is corrupt, isn't it?
You have to.
We're corrupt.
Yes, you have to get them and suffocate them, but just get them and hold them and don't let them run away.
Catch them and suffocate them.
Yes.
So that's his fatwa. Yeah, very, very loving and peaceful, isn't it?
Yes, religion of peace.
Yes, I just, this religion of peace just gives me chills. The slice of life this week is of this wonderful, brave woman. She's just passed away recently, but there's this photograph of her, remembering her when she stood up against compulsory veiling during a massive march of women's rights campaigners against the Iranian government's imposition of compulsory veiling.
Her name is Malike Nikjumand, and she was an artist.
Yeah. Shida Rahmani was her stage name.
And look at this picture. of her standing. That epitomizes, you know, the whole resistance of women's movement in Iran has never died.
Yeah.
And people like her stood up against the Islamists and set the scene for years of resistance against the Islamists.
Yeah. Which continues to this day,
And he's going to bury the Islamists in Iran. Remember this beautiful picture.
Yes, yes. Anyway, that brings us, we are showing this picture though because she has unfortunately passed away. She was in her 80s. And of course, she never saw the day when women could go unveiled in Iran. But that day will come very soon, hopefully. Anyway, we've reached the end of our program. We hope you enjoyed our program. Do keep watching us and staying in touch. We love hearing from you. Until next week, have a wonderful week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Maryam Namazie.
And I'm Fariborz Pooya.
We're hosting a program called Bread and Roses. It's a weekly program that's broadcast in Persian and English in the Middle East and North Africa, primarily Iran as well. And it's also shown on YouTube internationally.
And we've been doing this since last May. We're coming up to our year's anniversary, and we've had quite a lot of fun making these videos.
We discuss taboo-breaking, free-thinking ideas. The Islamic regime of Iran has called us immoral and corrupt.
And that's why you need to support us. We are the alternative voice in Middle East and North Africa.
Of corruption and immorality. So do support us. Here's a short video from Patreon that explains how you can help us with even just $1 a week. That's nothing. Support us.
Patreon lets fans become patrons of their favorite artists and content creators. It's different than Kickstarter because it's not about one big project that requires lots of funding. It's more for bloggers or YouTubers or webcomics, anyone who creates on a regular basis. Here's how it works. When you become a patron, you're agreeing to give an artist a tip of an amount you set every time they release a piece of content, whether it's a new song, a video, or a recipe. You can set a monthly maximum to make sure that you're always within your budget. Choose an amount, enter your payment information, and you're done. Becoming a patron allows you to view and post in the artist's stream, and in exchange for your support, artists offer additional patron packages, which might include monthly Google Hangouts, music production tutorials, pre-sale concert tickets, or anything they can offer as a way to say thanks. Patreon, empowering a new generation of content creators.